What's the tea? Yo, tell me what's the tea? What's the tea? Yo, tell me what's the tea? What's the tea? Yo, tell me what's the tea? What's the tea? Yo, tell me what's the tea? What's the tea? Yo, tell me what's the tea? What's the tea? Yo, tell me.
Hey you guys, thanks for watching and welcome to another episode of What's the Tea with me, your host, Hope Valentine. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about gender identity, gender expression, and to clarify a few of the terms that are used in the transgender community in reference to transgender, cross-dressers, transvestites, and transsexuals. Starting off, I'm going to talk about gender identity a little bit. I decided to Google gender identity to see exactly what the general definition is or how society would define the phrase. And what I got was it's your identity as it is experienced with regard to your individuality as male or female. So my interpretation of that was that basically how you experience um, how you identify and experience life as a male or female determines your gender identity. So as an individual, that was the key term, as in regard to your individuality. Um, Being male, living as or experiencing life as a female, or being female and experiencing life as a male in aspects, you that is your gender identity, as your identity as it is experienced. It's a little bit of a tongue twister. Um, so you can't exactly just say based on your physical biology whether or not a person is male or female. I mean, I guess you could scientifically through definitions, but the way a person is perceived and the way they live their life, that is their identity. Now you can choose to identify as male or female and physically be of the opposite, um, I guess, sexual orientation. I'm saying that wrong. Of the opposite sexual identity or whatever is the phrase I'm trying to find out, trying to figure out. So what you are physically doesn't define who you are, because your body may not always agree with your mental state. So for transgender people, in some situations or some cases, there are people who believed that they were born in the wrong body, and so they grow up and try to correct that by living and molding and shaping their life to the way that agrees with their mental state of mind. And for others, sometimes I've never come across this, but there are some people who may have chosen to live as the opposite sex. Whatever the case may be, that's still your gender identity. If you choose to experience life as a female, being born a male, that is your identity as it is experienced. Your gender identity, your identity is a female, that of a female. And for a female experiencing and living life as a male, that is their gender identity. That is them experiencing their life as a male, as an individual. We're not all the same person. We're all different people. There is no general term or whatever. You have to look at each person in their own respect and take each person as an individual, who they are, how they identify, how they live their lives. You can't just say, this is who you are, you look like this other person, that's who you are. So because underneath everything, underneath my makeup, underneath my hair, underneath my clothing, you could say I was born a male, but you can't look at me and say, well, that's the way you look, so that's who you are, you're a male. But that's not how I live my life. This is how I live my life as a female. This is how I represent myself. This is how I make myself to be. This is how I show myself to other people. So you may know what's behind the scenes, others may not. So you can't in turn decide for yourself what my gender identity is or what my identity is. There's also people who use the term genderqueer or the Z gender or whatever it may be. Those individuals are people who choose not to be labeled as male or female. They're in their own category. They can be androgynous. They can be male or female with total disregard for what their biology is, and that is what they choose. That's how they identify. You can't force someone to choose whether they are male or female, because if you in today's society there is diversity, and there are people who are transgender, there are people who are born and live the way they are brought up to be. If you were born a male, they grow up and they live their life as a male, but they choose to also sometimes dress differently. There are people who are born female and they're brought up to be female, and they choose to dress a little more masculine. Whatever the case may be, if they choose to identify as genderqueer or of the opposite gender, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. A word doesn't identify who you are as a person. Gender doesn't exactly matter unless it comes down to procreation and continuing the species, because then in that case you do need a male or female to reproduce and continue the lineage. But that's all that matters. In regard to how a person decides to live their life, how they identify is how you should speak to them and how you should acknowledge them. Disregard what you believe and what you believe is correct in your mind. It all comes down to respect for one another and respect for human beings. So whether you're genderqueer, you identify as male being a female, or you identify as female being a male, that's your decision. And if that's how you are experiencing your life, that's what the definition is. It's your identity. That's the definition of gender identity. It's your identity as it is experienced in regard to your individuality as male or female. Now that might have been a bit confusing. It's really early in the morning. I'm a little tired. But if you guys have any comments or any insight or input you want to give me on that, you can write it in the comment section and I'll respond to you guys about that. But now going into transgender identity or trans identity, whatever you want to dub the term. Transgender is the general term. There are different subterms or subcategories or whatever you want to say. The main one that I want to make clear to people is cross-dressing and being transgender are not the same. I often come across people who put them together and they ask, are you a cross-dresser or whatever? No, that's not the case. I recently had a conversation with a friend of mine who kind of clarified it for me. Um, but before I even start on that, once I do give my interpretation or whatever, if you guys have any comments or any insight, please enlighten me. I'm still learning as well about the different terms and things like that. Like, as far as you should know by now, I don't like labels. I don't go by labels. I live how I live. But please enlighten me, give me any insight or whatever, or any input that you might have to clarify for other viewers. But transgender is the general term for individuals who identify as the opposite sex from their physical biology. Cross-dressers, as I believe, are defined as, mostly you see these things with men and trying to be the opposite sex. I'm not sure if the case is the same for women or how society chooses to perceive these type of situations. But in regards to cross-dressing with men, cross-dressing is a male who is dressing as the opposite gender for personal reasons, for fun, whatever the case may be, or they like the way it feels. They are doing it for their own personal satisfaction. That has nothing to do with anyone else. Transsexuals are individuals who have gone through or mostly completed their gender reassignment. That's a transsexual, someone who has gone from their birth sexual identity or whatever to the opposite. So that would be a male transitioning completely or mostly to female and identifying as female, or a female transitioning completely or mostly to a male and identifying as such. Transvestites are a little bit more confusing. That I'm still trying to understand. These are not in the category of cross-dressers. These are men or women. I'm not sure how the term would be used for women, but in regards to men, transvestites are men who dress and behave as females for sexual gratification. As far as I come to understand, I'm not sure if I got a little bit mixed up or a little bit confused, but I'll try to clarify that later on if I did mix up the terms. But as I come to understand, transvestites are men who get off on being treated or being dominated or being treated as a female and taking on that persona. And another thing, drag queens are not in this category. Some people have also asked me that, are you just a boy in drag? No, I'm not a boy in drag. I am transgender. I'm using the general term transgender. I'm not as of yet completed my transition. So I use the general term transgender because I don't like labels. I don't want to be labeled as either or. I still want my freedom to live and to live my life as a female, but I also want the ability to be able to wear what I'm comfortable with wearing. So I may have a down day where I'm wearing a t-shirt and jeans or whatever, and I look a little more tomboyish or whatever. But drag queens are not transgender. They're not cross-dressers. Drag queens are men who dress and impersonate women for entertainment. Now you have to make sure you know your definitions for the terms, because you don't want to offend anyone, because they can be very offensive. I'm more of an open-minded person, and I try not to get aggravated with people who aren't sure. Because, I mean, there are some people who are ignorant, and there are some people who are just unsure and don't know what terms to use. So rather than getting angry with a person or getting offended and taking it out on them, be kind, enlighten them. Like I said, through learning and through knowledge, we'll all understand each other, and we'll come together as one, and push for equality and unity and other things like that. So just be more open-minded and try to enlighten people who don't know. And even for ignorant people, even if they're going to be ignorant about the situation, still just let them know. Just an FYI, this is what this is not what that is. Just so people can become a little less ignorant and a little more open-minded to the situations. And well, I guess I hope I've clarified a little bit for you guys, giving you a little bit of knowledge. I'm not my best today. I'm a little bit tired. It's been a long work day. But I definitely welcome you guys' comments. Any questions or anything you might have for me, please leave the comments or questions in the comment box down below. Leave me any video responses or whatever. Give me some ideas of any topics you guys want to talk about. Like I said before, I'm here to be the voice of those who don't have a voice. I'm here for you guys to have a conversation. I'm here for those who just need an ear to listen. Whatever you want to talk about, whatever comments you have, please leave me anything down below. You guys can contact me on my Facebook through Hope Valentine. I do have 2 profiles. Feel free to add me on either. I'll answer your questions or comments anonymously, or if you want to have a conversation, we'll have a conversation through Facebook chat live during a video posting, or whatever you prefer, whatever you like, over the phone. Anything is welcome. I just want to be here for you guys, so we can get a voice out for the LGBT community, especially for the young community, especially for the younger transgender community. We need to enlighten people and be there, speak, be a voice for the people who aren't yet as out as we are, and are still struggling and still trying to get their lives together and still trying to search for and fight for acceptance. So we've got to be there for each other. I'm definitely starting out there and stepping out there to be an advocate for you guys. So if you like, please, I'm repeating myself for the 4th time, leave me comments, questions, video responses, anything you have, and we'll talk about it in our next video. So I hope you guys have a good night. I'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Tell me what's the tea? What's the